Hey community group leaders and teachers, I hope you're doing well and having a fabulous day. Hey, I'm excited to introduce this week's Leadership Minute. This is one more tool that we can have in our tool belt to lead more effectively. Over the course of the month of December, we are going to be looking at different characters in and around the Christmas story to see how we can find some leadership lessons in what they did as they responded to Jesus of Nazareth being born, his announcement being made, and what does that mean for us today as leaders here in the 21st century in America. So looking back, last week we looked at Zechariah and what happened with him in Luke chapter 1, how he responded to the angel and came to him and what that means for us today. Today, I want to look at Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus, the stepfather, so to speak, of Jesus, and how he responded when God came to him, and what does that mean for us? So in Matthew chapter 1, starting in verse 18, we read a little bit about Joseph. We read that he, in verse 18, that he was a righteous man, in verse 19, that he didn't want to disgrace Mary publicly. He knew that she was pregnant, and so he wanted to privately settle the matter. But then an angel came to him. And when the angel came to him, the angel gave him some information about who Jesus was, about what was going to happen. You were to name him Jesus because he will save people from his sins. Jesus, Yeshua, that literally meant that he will save people from his sins, just referring to God's goodness, that God is in the business of saving people. And then quoted from Isaiah, "See, the virgin will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and they will name him Emmanuel," which translated is God with us. And then Joseph heard and responded according to verse 24. He obeyed what the angel said. He trusted that God was indeed moving. So what does all that mean for us? And as we look at this passage, there's a couple of things that are noteworthy. Number one, that Joseph was a righteous man. He intentionally sought God and wanted to build a connection with God. In that, one of the things that is an evidence of that we're told is that he wanted to deal with sin in a very private and personal way that covered over sin, so to speak. The perceived sin was Mary being pregnant, of course, and we know that was no sin on her part. That was the Holy Spirit, what he was doing. And yet Joseph, not knowing any details, wanted to cover over things. He felt that sense of obligation as a leader that he should do that. Even later on, when Joseph and Mary are going to Bethlehem for the census that Augustus has issued in Luke chapter 2, we read that Joseph takes Mary with him. He feels this obligation to cover over her. He wasn't required by law to do so. They weren't married yet. He didn't have to do so, but he chose to do so because probably he felt this obligation. That was part of his leadership style, that he was called to cover over other people around him. Something about us as leaders, and there's something in that for us as leaders, that we should cover over people that are around us and what's going on. Respond with grace, respond with compassion, and certainly cover over other people. The other thing that's noteworthy from the passage that I look at is that Joseph heard God through the angel and responded. That Joseph rather changed his plans based on what he heard the angel saying, what he heard God saying through the angel. And so there's something in that for us as leaders as well, that when we hear God speaking to us, we should be willing to respond to that and not be so hard-hearted that it has to be our way or the highway, but that we're willing to allow our course to be redirected as the Lord speaks to us, whether it's through his word, whether it's through some other people around us, whether it is even through what we feel like is God, and then other people confirm that, that sort of thing. So if you have any questions about this Leadership Minute or any other Leadership Minute, I want to encourage you to reach out to me. You can send me a text or an email. Certainly with this one, with listening to the voice of God in particular, there's a lot more involved than what we have time to address in this short amount of time. I also encourage you to read Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. That is an incredible source for understanding the will of God and knowing how to dive into that and discerning God's voice. So if you have any questions about that, reach out to me, of course. But I'm excited to see how God is going to use each of these characters to shape our leadership style, to help us to become people that are more moldable to who he is and what he's doing in our lives, as we help other people experience that Emmanuel, that God with us, Jesus, God in the flesh, to invite people to experience the hope that comes from walking with him. I hope you have a wonderful day, friends. I look forward to seeing you back here again next week for our next Leadership Minute. Hey, blessings.